Hi babies! Welcome back to Today Scout Learns. You thought I was going to break my promise, didn't you? Okay, before we start, I've got 2 tips for you. 1. Stop spinning it around. If you're playing in a team and you've got the dread on you, just let it come to you. Actually look where your teammates are and have it face its bum to them. Let it come towards you. Leave its bum exposed to your teammates. Don't try to get to its back, because when you do that, all you're doing is making it spin around and then nobody can shoot it. It's annoying and it's silly and it's stupid. Stop doing it. In solo it's different, but we'll come to that in a minute. my favourite sentence, I know. Shh. Okay, and the second tip, ping it. Even on Has 5, I have teammates that forget to ping it, and then they're in chat, oh, where is it? Ping the bloody thing. Every now and again, just ping it, and then you can always see where it is when it goes behind terrain, or you go behind terrain for cover, or whatever, and stop spinning it around. If it's on you, just let your teammates do it. Ah, but big sis, I want to shoot the big monster. Don't worry, my babies. I'm going to tell you how you can do both. Zippity! Allow me to illuminate the situation. Okay, before we go down, you know the routine. Let's jump into the miner's manual. The Glyphid Dreadnought, the worst of the bunch, and arguably the worst thing Hoxus has yet to throw at us. It's fast, smart, huge, and carries enough bioweapons to fight a small war. It sports several preferred methods of attack, including firing actual fireballs at you, or sending cataclysmic shockwaves through the very ground you stand on. It has its abdomen exposed for heat dissipation, like much of its kind, but unlike the rest, this one has a tough outer shell that needs to be cracked before you can hit the weaker innards. And to make matters worse, it is capable of regenerating said shell within seconds. R&D's primary recommendation upon meeting a dreadnought is simple: run. Unfortunately, R&D is not in charge of our missions. Mission control is, and above him, of course, is management, who don't really give us the option to run. Okay, so that's the miner's manual. Let's see what the wiki has to say about it, shall we? The Dreadnought is an offensive and defensive powerhouse, with dark, spiky chitin covering the majority of its body and a blood red skin tone. It has razor-sharp fangs. Its overall body shape is quite similar to the Praetorian, but it has greatly increased stats. Now this bit is interesting. I've got a little confession for you. I've never actually soloed Dreads before. For Road to Legendary 3, where I Has 5 soloed all these scout promotion missions, there was actually not an eliminate Dreadnought mission. So I've never actually soloed a Dread mission. So this is my first time soloing against Dreads. And what I found interesting is it's actually very similar to fighting an oppressor. And as we knew from the last episode, an oppressor is basically a heavily armoured Praetorian. So it just makes sense, right? Like the Praetorian, its entire body is covered in unbreakable armour, even the parts which appear to have no armour plating. The only place it can be damaged is its abdomen. Not true, we'll get to this in a minute. What we must do is break the shell first, and then hit its weak spot to damage its main health bar. Its health is the red bar, and its yellow bar is its shell. It's important to note here that the weak spot damage bonus on your mods does not affect the shell. It only affects the inside, the glowing yellow, its weak spot. The same goes for armor breaking. Armor breaking actually does not affect the shell, so keep that in mind. So for dread missions, personally, I don't really take armor breaking. I take something that's going to be a little more useful, but I do take weak spot damage, because even though it doesn't work against the shell, it does work against the weak spot, obviously. It's got the usual biting and claw swiping attacks like other glyphids, though with increased damage. It can also spew explosive fireballs, which deal massive damage in a tight raid, a very tight raid. It can fire it out of its bum. They're like homing missiles, and it's coming out of its mouth, but even if it's facing away from you, it can actually just come out of its bum at you. It's so silly. And it can also set swarmers onto you. Its signature attack, the Trembling Stomp, deals extremely high damage in a wide radius around the Dreadnought itself. You've probably seen this. The ground comes up a little bit. It'll roar. Dirt. You'll see dirt like rise from the ground a little bit, and then it'll stomp. The radius is quite large, but not too large. You shouldn't have any problem grappling away from it. And again, just a footnote. The roaring animation is sped up the more players there are in the game. So if you have a full team, it is quite easy to get caught in this. Just watch for the very beginning of that animation. If you see dirt coming from the ground, get out. The Dreadnought chases one dwarf at a time while ignoring the others. As said in the beginning, if it is on you, keep it on you. Just lure it towards you and make it face its bum towards your teammates. On Has 3, which is the baseline we use for this series, its health, that's it, its red bar is a whopping 6,000. That goes up to 8,500 on Has 5, and 2,040 for its shell, Has 5 to 890. Like all other glyphids, its bite has a 2.5 meter radius. Its melee attack has a 2.5 meter radius. Its stomp is 6.75 meter radius, with the maximum damage taken when you're within 6 meter of that radius and outside 10% damage. According to mission control, the Dreadnoughts are implied to be able to turn into something even worse if left to pulpate for too long, which is why we need to go down and take care of them while they're in the cocooning stage. However, I'm not sure if this is just flavor text or if it's a teaser for a future bug, for a future season. I hope so. A little nobody like me doesn't really have access to the devs' minds, so I have nobody to ask about this. If I asked in the Discord, it'd just be supposition. So as it stands, it's unknown if it turning into something worse is just flavor text or not. Okay, this was an interesting one for me to go down and test. As I said, it was very similar to fighting an oppressor. It's amazing how different the game plays when you're solo versus a full team. Remember, I came from a multiplayer support scout background. It's only the past few months I switched to Has 5 solo scout. I still prefer multiplayer. I did the solo thing mostly just to improve and learn. This is why I started this series as well, because it helps me learn. I'm learning things that I never knew before, and it helps me in my own games, so I really do hope it helps you. And believe it or not, it's actually easier to kill in solo than it is in multiplayer. I mean, it doesn't have as much health, for starters. And as mentioned in the wiki, do you know where the animations are sped up? The more players there are. In solo, it is so incredibly slow. And on top of that, there's amazing ways to slow it down even more. I went down with the dash perk, momentum on my grapple, hot feet on the Drac, all the mobility you need. And as promised, I'd tell you how to attack it from the front when it's on you, so you can shoot the big monster. I took down the bolt shark with stun bolts.
Let there be light. Let me set this low. Lock and load it.
Sorry about my microphone vibrating there. I'm not sure what was going on there. I need a new microphone stand. It's a bit wobbly. But yeah, stun bolts, a couple of stun bolts in the Dread slows it right down. And with an IFG, oh my god, it barely moves. This is a great time to dash behind it and go for its weak spot. As long as no teammates are firing at it, because you don't want to get in their way. But the bolt sharks actually damage it from the front. Obviously not as much as its weak spot. But if it's on you and you've got teammates who are firing at its weak spot, you can deal your own damage from the front using the bolt shark. The Drac with splash damage also works.
Gotta go slow.
So, not very efficient, but if the Dread is on you and you've got the Drac with splash damage and you've got the bolt sharks, just use those from the front and lure it towards you. Leave your teammates to deal with its weak spot, and then when it's on one of those, that's when you can go for the weak spot. Just showing you here that you can shoot its fireball projectiles. They're pretty easy to dodge, and unless you've got amazing aim, which I do not, I suggest you dodge them instead, but you can just shoot them down. And there I was just showing you the radius of its stomp. So you see the dirt coming out of the ground? That's when you actually see the dirt before it's raw. But again, in multiplayer missions, this is all sped up. So keep your eye out for that. As soon as you see dirt lifting from the ground, get out. That's about the radius of its stomp that I showed you there. So keep that in mind, keep that distance in mind. Now, what about solo? How do we actually get to its weak spot in solo? The Dread does a roar, and in solo, this is the advantage. It's actually really slow. Where it stands still, it is stationary, and that's why I took down the dash perk. This is a great perk to take for Dread missions. It's not one I really take much, but for Dread missions, I always find it helpful to dash fast behind. I was a little slow on the power attack there, but that's something to keep in mind as well. Remember what I've taught you before? Power attacks ignore armor. That counts for Dreads as well. That counts for Dreads. Don't be afraid to use your power attack. But you saw there, the roar, you actually see its front legs lift up first. It'll lift up its front legs and then roar. But while it's doing that, it is absolutely stationary. So that's a great time to dash behind, like I just did there, and hit its weak point. That's the Drac with the bolt shark. You'll see these feature a lot on this channel because they are my favourite weapons. It is my favourite loadout. But what else have we got at our disposal? What else could we take down? Okay, I took down the M1 and I built it for hip fire. No hipster because I'm doing these without overclocks, remember? But I went down with, instead of armor breaking, I usually take armor breaking on the M1, but as said earlier, armor breaking actually doesn't help against the dreads. It doesn't help against the shell, and unlike the Drak with the splash damage, you can't shoot it from the front either. It doesn't work like that. Unfortunately, the same with blow through. You can't shoot it from the front to get its weak spot at the back. It doesn't work like that. So I set it to hip fire, just to give me that little bit of mobility and speed. Damage and weak point damage. It wasn't surprising to me that at the end the M1 did its job. I mean, in multiplayer games, I always take the M1 for dread missions for a reason. I usually have the hipster overclock though, so I was firing quite slow there. But with the hipster, it's do amazing. Yeah, excuse my goofy aim. I don't have the best aim in normal circumstances, but I can't reach my mouse properly with this bloody chair that's it's basically on the floor, and my desk is all the way up there. My little arms can't reach. So I can't. That's why I don't really play much these days. But as soon as I can afford a new chair, I'll buy one. But yep, the M1 does its job with hip fire. I like hip fire, as I've said, for the mobility and the maneuverability. So I'm not always focus shotting, and plus I find you can get more shots off per. I mean, yeah, you can deal more damage per shot with that focus shot bonus, but you have to think, even with the focus shot mod to focus faster, you can fire off more rounds hip firing it. I found it's a little different once you've got overclocks. I mean, sometimes if I feel like it for dread missions, I'll take super cooling chamber for that hard hitting focus shot damage on dreads. That's when I'm having a good day. My aim's not too goofy. As always, the Zuks with conductive bullets performed really well. I don't know why I don't use these guns more often. I suppose it's just not many situations I really need them. I mean, those conductive bullets come in handy, I suppose, especially for dread missions, because if you've noticed, I haven't mentioned any of the grenades in this episode like I usually do. That's because for dread missions you should always be taking IFGs. I mean, what do you need the other grenades for? They're useless. Don't worry about the swarm, let your teammates deal with the swarm. If you're playing solo, don't worry about it, let Bosco help you. Lay down IFGs. Just what I do is I have my primary with weak spot damage, and I have my secondary as blow through for swarm clear. So don't worry about the other two grenades. For eliminations, you should always be taking IFGs for that 30% damage boost, because we want to take these things down quickly and as efficiently as possible, don't we? But I just prefer the bolt shock. I mean, for the bolt shock you have magnetic shafts, which increases damage within an electrical field, aka IFG. So I find the stun bolts with magnetic shafts a lot more helpful than anything else. But I should play around with these more, because they performed very well against the dreads. They're definitely a valid contender. So that's the Zuks, the M1, the Drak and the Bolt Shark. What about the GK and the Boomstick? The Boomstick actually performed really well. I went with damage instead of ammo efficiency, and I went with extra pellets. For the GK, again I went damage and I went fire rate. The GK performed about as well as you'd expect. It didn't do bad. It didn't do bad actually, to be fair to it, especially with the fire rate mod. But without overclocks, what is it, the AI stability? I do take the GK on elimination missions sometimes, but I use the AI stability system. And the boomstick did really well. Of course, I took the shockwave mod on the boomstick, because why wouldn't you? We're against the dreads. Its bum will be within 4 meters in front of you, so use that shockwave mod to put out just that little bit of extra damage. Boomstick good. Boomstick very, very good. There's a reason it's still my favourite weapon, despite my love and affection for the Bolt Shark. The GK2, That's not to say the GK2 is bad. Again, as I've said, with overclocks, AI stability system is a great one. Bullets of Mercy is another great one. The GK2 can do its job. It's a great single target weapon. Just against dreads, we have better options. That's all. We've got better options that can do the job better. So that's it for this episode of Today Scout Learns. That's the Glyphid Dreadnought. I hope it's been of some help to you. Personally, I think the quickest and most efficient way to deal with the Dreadnought is to take the M1 with hipfire, damage, weak spot, and the Bolt Shark with magnetic shafts and stun bolts, and of course the IFGs. Don't you dare go to an elimination without IFGs, especially if you're a multiplayer. Come on, support your teammates. Haha. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. It might be a few days until I get the next one up, because I am pooped and I need to live stream on Twitch, and I need to get Ocean 5 episode 10 done as well. If you don't know what that is, it's a docudrama cop show I create on another channel. The link is in the description. Check it out, it's pretty nifty. Good luck in the caves of Hoxus. Happy mining. Bye bye. Bye bye. See ya, suckers. Zippity.